It gave him an opportunity to develop their own product with a small team. Just because you don't need like 20 Java engineers, you can have like 3 to 5 Clojure engineers.
Is it moving forward or it's stagnating?
Yeah, so 3 answers to that. You can have a monkey in the logo, and who doesn't want a monkey in the logo, you know?
So for the early startups, the over-engineering might not be a problem. The problem might be is actually under-engineering.
Guerrilla tactics, yeah? I met this on my previous job 12 years ago when I brought Clojure into QA department.
I'm not really risk shy on that. I'm always like, well, I kind of figured out, probably.
So once you try Clojure, there is no way back.
It's just my de facto language until the day I quit or die.
And right now, how do you evaluate the state of ecosystem? Is it getting better from year to year or anything else?
I can rant about it forever, but I think that's the whole problem with Clojure adoption. It's not that everyone tried it and then went away. It's like most people don't even try it.
Hey guys, welcome to the third episode of the podcast, Clojure in Product. Would you do it again?
And today we're meeting with Marten Sytema, the co-founder and chief technology officer at CaterMonkey, based in Netherlands. CaterMonkey is a cutting-edge web platform designed to simplify daily operations and drive sales for catering businesses.
And today, more than 200 event venues, food trucks, and other catering companies across the Netherlands and Belgium are benefiting from using this product to optimize their workflows and grow their businesses.
Yeah, and we will also here respond to the very interesting question passed from our previous guest, Adam Thornhill, Chief Technology Officer at Kostiuk. And the question is, if you could fly back in time 15 years and have a conversation with Rich Hickey, what would you convince him to change in Clojure?
So let's begin. Map our questions and macro expand them into real-life Clojure experience.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Martin. Thanks for joining us on our third episode, Clojure in Product. Would you do it again? Today, we'll talk a lot about your personal story with Clojure and your experience in building your own product as a solo engineer. But to start, I would like to ask you about how the idea of creating your own product came about and what is actually CaterMonkey.
So CaterMonkey is a niche product for catering businesses. It's a web app where a catering business can organize themselves. So it helps with estimates, price quotes, invoicing, but also everything kitchen related, like prep lists, all kinds of, overviews and reports. And also there's like a calendar in it where you can just see what you need to do basically. It's basically a to-do list app, but then way more than that. It's like an ERP, but then really focused towards catering businesses. So with a lot of kitchen stuff. So having said that, the idea came about when I basically in 2011, which is a long time ago, but then already a catering business asked me to develop as a freelance developer a system specifically for them to organize themselves. And I was kind of looking for a good idea to make a SaaS web app, because that was kind of my ambition and dream to work on a product rather than work on services, which in the service mode, which I was doing most of the time. This felt like a good idea, and I saw at least in the Netherlands where we're based, there was no competition in this actually, or not much. So I thought, well, this is worth pursuing. And then I grew it small, bootstrapped it basically as a side project for a few years. Got 15 or so customers. So it was all right, but it was never really took off. But I knew that I solved the problem. And then at some point, one of my customers, which is now the co-founder, said he's from Belgium, which is bordering the Netherlands, and we speak the same language, which is Dutch. And he asked me, can I sell this software in Belgium? And I was like, yeah, but I have a 2.0 version in my head, because the 1.0 version was made in Java in Google Web Toolkit. with Spring. I got more and more frustrated by Java in this year. So we're now like at 2017, 18-ish. And I already dabbled with Clojure, like with one of the freelance projects and a lot of hobby. And I was determined, like the new 2.0 version will be in Clojure script, like all in on the tech stack, basically, because I loved like things like reframe and all the good stuff like on the front end as well. And Fig Wheel back then and now Shadow and all. Well, I was like, okay, we should make a 2.0 version and then join team, because I would say I'm decent as a CTO, but I'm not a really good entrepreneur in like the commercial marketing kind of stuff. And he was very good, or is very good at it. So in 2018, we really made the Clojure version and launched it in 2019, January 1st.
Nice. And back then in 2018, why have you decided actually to have this like 2.0 version of the application in Clojure?
3 answers to that. So I had one big project for another SaaS system in the Netherlands for recruitment that I built in Clojure from 2016 onwards, like just as a freelancer. Basically, I built it for someone else, basically, not like my own product, but I just as a sole developer. But and I could choose the stack on that point. That was 2016, and I went for Clojure because I had some hobby projects in it. And I was like, okay, the next web app will be in Clojure. And ClojureScript, I did that and I loved it. I actually loved it. So every time there was like another freelance gig or something, or a little project for an existing customer, they wanted some customer of mine wanted very different. They wanted like a portal for something, and I built it in Clojure. So I already got some smaller projects going on. It just fit like a glove. Like the ergonomics about it, everything about it, I kind of loved. So, and I wanted my own product. I still wanted, I still had one, but it was not really successful at that point. So I was like, okay, this 2.0 version will be built in Clojure. I've learned a few things now in the 2 years that I'm doing this. So I couldn't wait basically. And then we basically just went for it. And the idea of like the business idea of the app and what the app should do, that was already very clear. I had a lot of experience in the years of 2012 until 2016, what works and 18, and what works and what didn't work, for instance, and what was good about the app and what was not good about the app. So I had a lot of domain knowledge at that point, and I was just ready to make it really a nice product with a better name. So better name, it's subjective, but we went the Firefox, SurveyMonkey kind of route. So I'm not sure if that's a good name, but at least it's catchy. You can have a monkey in the logo, and who doesn't want a monkey in the logo, So so that was really, and then the fun began. So that's basically why I went this route. Yeah,
it's interesting. Thank you. And moving from hobby project to real production business that you are depends on. Yep. Is a big step. So have you worried about something when you started this second version of a project?
Well, I did some spiking, I would say, like just like seeing, okay, line Uber jar. Okay, now I have a jar. Okay, I know jars because I deployed jars before, So I kind of felt, and the database was still SQL, what I was using. So I felt that I had enough stuff that I knew, and to basically say, okay, I can do this. There's a lot of resources also available. Well, if you look for it, for like how to host it, and so that also gave like blog posts and stuff that gave me confidence as well. I'm not really risk shy on that part. I'm always like, well, I kind of figured it out. It worked kind of, and sometimes some things doesn't work, and then I just have to make sure it does. So
And aside from deployment part, have you some worries about Clojure as a main technical stack? If it's a business, it's more about organization, people, and maybe such kind of stuff. Have you thought about such things?
It's funny. I actually saw it as an opportunity rather than as a risk. So, it's my psyche, I guess. I could move very fast because I know, and that was confirmed when I worked on this recruitment app. in 2016 to 2018 that I could get stuff done, having way more fun, which is an important aspect, I think. But like the ergonomics of it, it was so fun to craft with Clojure, as opposed to typing new hash map and then the little thing sign and in Java, because that was so, it felt so shoehorny in a way, like, and also the object oriented stuff, I got less and less in favor of it as the years went by. So and then I thought back about my one class I took in university in 2008 in functional programming, the elegance of it, and that kind of stuff really came back. But it still was very pragmatic, and I'm kind of in a pragmatic kind of way, not because I tried Haskell as well, which is nothing bad about Haskell. I kind of like, but at some point it's I would say it doesn't fit the way I think, basically, not as well as Clojure. And Clojure is like, it does not get in the way. It doesn't get in the way. It works for you, and you have this short feedback loop, and it's the way I think, and this is like the programming language that fits really into that way my brain works. So yeah, I love it. So I saw it as an opportunity, actually, rather than like a risk, because I was the sole developer at that point. Anyway, the one thing I thought, because I have a good friend, a Python developer here in town, a good friend of mine who asked, yeah, but when you hire people at some point, aren't you worried you can't find anybody? And I had a little bit of worry, but then it turned out it wasn't that hard, actually, because there's not a big pool of developers. So that was the one risk I saw, basically. But it turned out not to be big of a problem, because there's maybe a small pool of developers relatively, but the quality of them is very high. That what amazes me as always. And also people who get it and like think like me, they basically want jobs like this. So we do have a team of remote developers now, so that's the one trade-off. So it's an illusion to say, like, in this rural part of the Netherlands where I'm at, there might be 2 or 3 Clojure developers, if if at all. But if you go a little bit further, like Amsterdam, Paris, and all it doesn't really matter, right? I mean,
yeah. I heard the idea that Clojure works as a filter for developers.
Exactly. It's actually what I was saying to this mate of mine who asked this, with the Python developer. Another friend of mine was also a co-founder who works with PHP. And, it sounds maybe arrogant, but he said, like, the PHP founder, big company now and all that, he said, like, there's a lot of programmers or people who apply for our jobs who aren't really good, for lack of a better word. But whenever we had interviews, in general, I was kind of impressed always. Like, all right, I can learn a lot from you, from you, So like stuff like that. And also, I had one Clojure gig in 2017. Like, as a freelance, I joined a very big corporation in the Netherlands, like an energy company. We had a small R&D team. 2017, basically joined it just to see if I can work in a Clojure team and just learn about it. It wasn't really my career goal or something like that, because I already had the idea of this, building my own app and all that. But I learned a lot of stuff, like also about the practical day-to-day stuff, like, the tooling and the fact that the editor and Cider, and I'm a kind of a Vim user, but I also loved Cider, and then someone told me about Spacemacs, and that was, again, it was like, this is like for me, that was like this. That was pretty fun as well, yeah.
On our recent episode, we talked with Adam Thornhill from Code Scene, and he told us that at the very beginning, when he only started the company, he had to compete with large companies. It's probably fair for every startup nowadays.
Yeah.
And he mentioned that Clojure actually gave him competitive advantages in terms of developing their own company. He was talking about moving efficiently, faster, and most importantly, it gave him an opportunity to develop their own product with a small team.
Yep.
Just because you don't need like 20 Java engineers, you can have like 3 to 5
Clojure
engineers.
Yeah.
Thinking of the early days of CaterMonkey, do you think that Clojure gave you some competitive advantages or opportunities to overcome the competitors?
Yeah, well, it wasn't the good thing about this product is there wasn't really much competition. There was like one system that was like a desktop app in the Netherlands and Belgium where we were at first going. Most of our customers, like our potential customers, just use Word and Excel, and then they do it in a way that, but they're not tech savvy. So to just leave it at that. So there's still a big opportunity for us in this, even in our countries, but also we get requests now from Germany and from the UK and from France, like, hey, when will your app be translated? Because it's such a vertical, it's such a niche product. So the competition aspect wasn't really a problem. Say a friend of mine that I just told, the PHP, he had a product there was way more apps in competition with it. So for them, it was more of an issue, I would say. But for me, it wasn't kind of. But I had the competition kind of with myself. Like I could see that I was developing so much faster when I switched to Clojure, even before CaterMonkey, like with the recruitment app I was building. I knew how fast I was like before, and then I could basically compare it. Like I was like, this is way better, way less friction, way more to the point, way less code. And it's kind of funny, like it's now 2024 and it was 2016, so it's 8 years of code. If I look back at 8-year-old Java code of mine, not that I became so much better at Java, I didn't, but it's just like, how was this class structure working again, all that? And now if I look back at 8-year-old Clojure code, all right, maybe I used a little too many let bindings by then instead of threading, kind of those things. But in general, it's really like, okay, I can touch this again, and it doesn't feel like old code. Like, oh, remember this? This is how we do it. But with JavaScript, it's even worse. I mean, I don't even know like JavaScript now and nowadays. Like the all the syntax is going on. I always have to kind of look it up because I'm abstracted away from it, like through ClojureScript, and just everything is the same toolbox again. So I knew that it was a better way to do things. And I knew that I never needed 50 developers in the foreseeable future or something like it. So that wasn't, so it was strategic for me to use it basically, just for my own. The thing is, if things go fast, there's this secondary effect. If things go fast, you love what you're doing, and the short feedback loops give you this little rush all the time. I knew when Figwheel came out, that was like, this was what I needed, and now of course you can choose between Shadow, JLES, but the thing is that like you're editing something and it's in the screen, it auto updates. That feels so fast. It is fast, and you kind of feel you have superpowers in a way. Yeah, so it's cool. Which is only a tiny aspect, by the way, of what the benefits of Clojure is. It's just like the front end part and the feedback loop in that, but there's so much more. Like there's data going over the wire, and you have code that is just CLJC files, and they both on server side and client side operate on it, and there's not even like any friction or conversion or almost, which is amazing as well. So
you mentioned the early days of a product, and it's really interesting for me. So how the newcomers in Clojure start building the products. Have you noticed sometimes that the flexibility and ability to do anything in Clojure leads to over-engineering, and you need to refactor things afterwards because your project have a pretty big lifespan. So maybe you made some bad decisions that you've made before, and you need to somehow to refactor them.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I think actually it is less than compared to what I used to do in Java, like way less. I'm not really using like those interfaces a lot and the dev types, but I'm basically just using functions, like just functions. If you squint, right? In general, multi-methods and stuff I do and all that. And macros I kind of like don't really, I'm a power user of macros, I use it here and there. But then what happens is you have functions and you have data and the whole That's it. So in general, if you can do any kind of pattern like that in Java that has a special name.
Yeah.
There's one. I think that in 2016 or something there was a blog post about it. Like, oh, it's the adapter visitor pattern, adapter walla pattern, and then it's like, oh, it's just in Clojure it's equivalent. It was just like functions all the time. And that's basically the burden that fell off my shoulders because I knew all these patterns. I have a degree in software engineering, and I learned all these things and. It's so cumbersome, actually, if you think about it. And now it's so much simpler in the rich, hickey sense of the word. My code is kind of okay all the time, in general. Of course, sometimes, as I said, like you grow a function too big, and and you get these big LED bindings and stuff. But at some point, you can quite easily refactor it because you kind of use pure functions anyway, and so and at some point you get better at that. That specific part, so you do that like from the start and rather than refactor it after the fact. So that is what I would say experience gave me, at least. Yeah. So no big refactorings we didn't really need to do. But on the other hand, I must maybe put it in perspective a bit. We have a web app where the structure is kind of very in a way straightforward. It's like one jar deploy. There's no microservices, and on server side there's like a database layer and a service layer. So it's kind of in a way run of the mill architecturally speaking. And also on the client side we have sort of like we use reframe. So with reframe it kind of tells you like this is how you structure your code. And then we use names for the same name for every like domain aspect of the code, like invoices, price quotes, orders, the things that are living in our app, in our domain. We use files in namespaces and then you basically can find everything. So the one thing is that maybe some files get really big with a lot of functions in it, but even that is I never felt like that as a big problem, like big files with code, because you navigate using the decider tools and all that to navigate from function to function. I don't know. It is not in the way. It isn't in the. And then you can easily factor it out to new namespaces anyway. So I kind of feel I can keep my complexity of code under control, to answer your question, way better than I did with PHP in the past and with Java.
And do you use some techniques like test-driven development or generational testing?
Yeah, not really test-driven, like religiously, but we do use unit tests, yes, sure. And that might be a thing that if you put things in pure functions, it invites you to unit test it, so that works hand in hand. On the other hand, sometimes you're going really fast in your head and on your screen with the outer, like in the front end, and maybe unit tests feel at that point like a burden. So I would say in the front end we don't really use it a lot, but we just try to use clean structures and that. But that actually we don't have a lot of orchestration in structure, like with classes and class hierarchies and. That you first need to understand to get going. It's just components. It's these reagent components. So it's everybody knows within our company at least, or who knows reagent, kind of knows how they look, and so you can just follow the code basically. And there's no class castle in the sky with sort of interfaces and
as a person coming from Java background, I can understand what you're saying. Factories.
Oh yeah, factory facade. Yeah, abstract.
And all such stuff.
And not only that, you also need so much code, like to type it, to declare that you have a factory of adapters of interface. There's this one slide I like, Rich Hickey, I think, where he in Simple Made Easy, where he shows like the Java equivalent of HTTP. Where like get requests, set requests, to get headers, and then he shows like just the Eden data of, it's just a map, and that's the thing I can so relate to Rich Hickey's charismatic. He was one of the sellers as well to me, because when I heard him speak like in these talks, I was like, yes, this is what I mean. And then that was basically a good selling point for me for Clojure, like basically just watching his talks. And also the Stuart Holloway,
Yeah.
and some other guys and girls as well. Yeah, but those two for me, they really struck a chord, so still do. So yeah,
We've seen the pattern from the guests of our podcast and from the projects that we've managed in a fresh code, that technical founders in Clojure projects are usually tend to continue development. So I do programming right now.
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And I'm not stopping either. No, I love that. I because like we were discussing like our dreams and goals in 2018 with my co-founder Matti. I was like, I will continue to build. I'm not going to be like a manager. I'm a bad manager, and I just want like a small, focused development team at some point. That not all the burden is on my shoulders, because in the beginning, when there was downtime or there was something going on, I was a sole developer in the beginning. So now we have a team, but like in the 2019 and stuff, that was kind of. It's nice that you can kind of share that burden, responsibility, and but I will be programming. But even if this will be a major success and someone buys the company or whatever, or I leave the company, I will be programming anyway.
For me, it's interesting how pure technical decision of taking Clojure influence the culture of development team. So how do you make architectural decisions? What kind of people are you hiring in your team? So it's a senior level or it's a middle or junior. So can you tell a bit more about culture of technical processes?
Yeah, and I will refer back to your word where you said filter.
Yeah.
Because that's basically what it does. Like, okay, we have a Clojure app. We wrote a job listing for a Clojure development on functional works or something. We put it, we published it there. There's already a filter, like in the hiring process. Like, there's not senior, junior, and stuff is already a little bit less relevant. If this would be done in Laravel PHP framework, one of the most popular ones, and then I put a job listing, I feel there's less of a filter. So a lot of people apply because they know PHP, but you don't know how good they know it. But with Clojure, there's always sort of they get it, and they look for jobs like that. And so there's a filter, like an intrinsic filter already. Like, people get it, and with it I mean like function composition, pure functions, composability, all these things that we like REPL driven, all that stuff. They get it. There's no one coming in here, I just want to learn Clojure, can you hire me and then I can learn it? Those people didn't really apply. Most people who applied to the job, for the two, we hired 2 developers at once in 2022, 23. Oh yeah, 23 last year, beginning of last year, yeah. So there were like 40 applicants, which was a lot, and like quality, like. And basically, at some point, we were like, okay, the first is nice if he can speak Dutch, and there were 2 Dutch applicants who had a good resume, But in the future, if we hire more developers, it's probably not even a requirement to speak Dutch. But we only are in the Dutch market still. But next year we already translated the app and stuff. So going forward, English speaking will not be a problem at all, and probably will happen. When we grow our team. Yeah.
I just have a question. You've been talking about over-engineering, and when we asked Adam on our recent episode about over-engineering, he actually, surprisingly, he answered with a very interesting thought. So for the early startups, the over-engineering might not be a problem. The problem is actually under-engineering. He mentioned there were some cases when he had to settle for a less elegant technical solution in terms of achieving a business goal, like actually to promote the business. Have you had such cases building CaterMonkey or not?
So yeah, but, I was the sole developer at the beginning, and I am not really an over-engineering type of person who gold plates, because that's like also a personality trait. If you are, if you aren't, go fast and break things is not really that, but it's more towards that end of the spectrum for me. And it's for me with everything. Like if you see my house, like at some point it is kind of feels good enough, and then I don't see anymore that I still have to fix that light bulb or paint this wall or paint, because I can live in it's kind of, it's not explicitly mentioned that I don't have to do it, but at some point I go, hey, I forgot to paint that wall, so that is my trait. So I am prone to under engineering, I would say. Like, well, I'm not sure if it's engineering, but it's like finishing it properly, like finishing the details, like rather than so. But luckily we have a nice team where there is kind of a balance in that now, where, and also that I learn daily, like from them as well. Like we discuss these kind of things, like, okay, maybe I'm too shortcut-y and too pragmatic, and maybe some other folks they polish too much and get bogged over. Should I use a threading macro or should I make a higher order function? Blah, blah. I think that's a balancing act for me. So yeah, but I have under engineering cases, where well, under engineering is more like you haven't thought of everything for me. Like that's all right. I think I'm all right with that part. But like really finishing it, like it's really finished, that's something maybe I'm working on, like say so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not saying about some delivering some bad quality features or something like that, but yeah, you answered the question. So it's about actually finding the right balance between over engineering and under engineering, and delivering the quality that is just needed. In terms of having a good product.
Because you always have like perfectionism. Maybe that's the word. Over engineering something else is perfectionism, but perfecting things is not always like perfect. So then often the time scale is ignored in perfecting something, and by not meeting time goals because you're perfecting, you're failing in a way. You're not failing maybe in the quality of the code, but in the time when it was delivered. So there's always like an economic aspect as well. Keeping that in mind, that aspect that like I'm not polishing everything. Also because it costs a lot of time. But of course it's a spectrum. Do you do enough or not? And also the fact that our application, I mean, a lot of people made way more complex stuff with Clojure than I am doing right now. In a way, from an architectural standpoint, like if you have a lot of microservices that work together and the performance of it and all that, by choice, keep it very simple. Like the structure of a web app, like the architecture of a web app is really simple in a way that most web frameworks are kind of simple. We basically cobble together a lot of libraries to build a framework, but we value simplicity in just using basic building blocks, and that also makes. But that's not under engineering. That's just making sure you don't get too complex, because that's the enemy of everything, I think.
As I said, the project lifespan is pretty big, and I've seen several times when such long-lived projects in Clojure do need some refactor. And maybe you can name some parts that were refactored or rebuilt from scratch or something like this for 8 years, yeah?
CaterMonkey is now launched in 2019, so 18 there was development already, so that's a little bit less time span. But the other one, the project I did before that, basically, which was my gateway to Clojure, to professional Clojure, which was the recruitment app, which is still going strong. Actually, funny thing, the hiring of our team went through that system. So, and still, again, if you go to our careers page on the CaterMonkey site, you see a little forms thing, which is an integrated, plugin for the website, which is built in Clojure. It's script, which was that thing. So that's kind of funny. What did we refactor? Well, not really Clojure specific stuff. More like, okay, we shouldn't store files on disk, but we should store it in like a S3 buckets. More that kind of thing. Was a refactoring. Honestly, not really big things. Well, function level, we do a lot of refactoring. I do. Like I have these things that grow. So we have one component or module in our system, which is by far the most complex, which is kind of an edge case for most caterers. Most catering businesses don't even do it. It's like daily meals for like senior folks, older elderly homes and also school meals and stuff, where the menu changes daily, bundled up in weekly menus. It's like all kinds of complexity going on there, like dietary wishes. Well, it's way more complex than just throwing a party with a buffet, like most catering businesses do. So in that, there's a lot of stuff going on, like calculating the right price, the right amount, which diets, all that. And in that, it grew small. It started small, and then we had this really big lead bindings where all kinds of intermediate stuff is going on. And at some point, I was like, okay, this is too heavy for everyone, for anyone. I never used that word, but like a pattern, like a higher order function, kind of sort of threading. It wasn't with macro, but just with a function. I actually get this whole lead bindings coloss into nice little functions, and then there's like one threading stack of applying things in order and saving the intermediate results in a map that gets passed through. It's sort of a pattern, and that helped a lot. And now we use it on other stuff in the code where we see here is it creeping as well, and use the same thing. And basically, that's a refactoring we do lately, and that would have saved me a lot of headache if I had done that way earlier. So because at some point, if it's in production and there's a request with a deadline on it, whatever, or an issue, and you kind of put a little lead in the lead binding, you put a little binding, and then it grows and grows. And also, in the beginning, I had functions with 2 arguments, and now they have more arguments. That's actually a burden on. Well, we'll get a little bit technical now, but it's a burden on 2 levels. Of course, you can. Because we refactor it now to pass in a map with options and then destructure it. And we should have done that earlier and more often, or from the start more often. Because sometimes downstream you split stuff up again in functions and again in functions, and then you keep passing these 5 arguments through everything. And everything gets a mess. Well, if it's a map, you can only destructure what you want, and it's way more clean. You cannot get the order wrong and all that stuff. So those kind of refactors we do, but in general nowadays we just do that right from the start, basically. So if we kind of say like if you have too many arguments, but it's easy to fall in that trap if you're like not really experienced and you start with a function with 2 arguments and then you add one and that maybe you recognize this, but that happened with us. But
imagine in 5 or 10 years, so your product became really successful and you decided maybe to sell it to gain some investments or something like this. And imagine the situation that you decided to move away from Clojure. We've seen such situations in our practice. Can you name the reasons why do you think such decisions can be made in future? So moving away from Clojure to some...
The new big thing. Yeah. It's funny because I was asking myself this, like up until 2016, that was what I was doing. I went from JavaScript framework 1, 2, 3, 4, PHP web framework, XYZ, Java's sort of the same thing, which kind of language construct was now. It was always more functional in the trend, but that was exhausting also for me. But as if I refer back to a little bit earlier, what I said, like old code, it's still kind of all right. It's called the Lindy effect. When if something stays for long, the chance of it staying for much longer increases. And for me, I hope the Lindy effect applies to Clojure. Meaning that it's just my de facto language until the day I quit or die. And that sounds like a bit religious or whatever, but it is a genuine feeling. Like if there's some domain specific thing that there's not like AI or something, and you need to leverage all the Python stuff, maybe that could be one of the reasons, but it already demotivates me to think about it. I kind of feel like I like my real language, because it does feel like that. I mean, since 2016, I am programming Clojure on a daily basis, and I less and less other languages. I mean, CSS is one of the only ones left. Even HTML is edited structurally now rather than so. Yeah, I'm not seeing myself getting away from that. Yeah.
Speaking about this linear pattern, I don't know how we should name it. Yeah, it's very good explanation for me. Thank you.
Okay.
The amount of code base and domain knowledge captured in this code base are growing, and it would be okay. Okay, thank you.
And you partially answered this question, but still, I meet a lot of engineers who are using Clojure day to day, and even we had a few podcasts before this episode, and I hear the same words from them. So once you try Clojure, there is no way back.
Yeah.
And in your opinion, why do you think engineers just don't want to try or leave Clojure and stay with it?
Okay.
After they actually tried Clojure.
Yeah. So you have to just list the things that you have now, and then say, okay, you can't use it anymore. In any piece of the code, I can do a little hotkey, and I see a pretty printed situation of this var, this symbol, this whatever. I have scope capture, which is also a really nice little plugin, by the way. Condo and all that stuff. You have this REPL driven. You have this shadow sale.js with the everything is a quick feedback loop. The REPL is so powerful. It's way more than just evaluating something. It's like a Swiss Army knife that you can just inspect everything and save the intermediate state. Maybe I mean I don't follow the other languages as much. I would almost say at all anymore. So maybe Python has a story like this and maybe JavaScript, maybe, but I doubt it. And also the fact that we don't talk about it that much, but like the structural editing, like the S expressions, like the concept of it, like the fundamental concept of it and the ergonomics of it, like with editing and racing and, I don't really know the names, but I know the hotkey. by muscle memory, and then you can't forget, like, what was it, racing? Yeah, it's this hotkey, That would all be gone if I would go to most other languages. I'm not sure if there's any other language. But if you haven't ever tried it, you don't know what you're missing. And I think that's the whole problem with Clojure adoption. It's not that everyone tried it and then went away. It's like most people don't even try it, because in the most lists, in a big corporation, there's always one of the other Java dialects that has more users, and it doesn't matter if it's better, but it has more users, which is seems like one of the most important requirements for people. But it's of course it's silly. It's really silly. But if you look fundamentally, and what do people do when they are hobbying? Then they don't have the boss and the manager and the company policies, and they just choose whatever, and then there's a chance they drink the Kool-Aid of using Clojure and really get it, because you do need a little bit of time with it to really get the benefit of it. You can get the conceptual benefit pretty quickly, but then like the day-to-day grinding of writing code, the ergonomics of it, I keep using that word because I think it's very important. At some point when you get all the hotkeys in your editor right, and it's almost like playing a piano where you know the song really well and you don't have to think about playing the notes, and it's all by feel. That kind of excitement, that takes a little bit of time, but then you cannot go back unless there's a different language that has all the same traits. Like that's how I feel about it. I'm not saying it's for everyone like this, but that's how I feel about like using Clojure.
Let's move to our last block.
Yeah.
It's your thoughts about the ecosystem of a Clojure, how it's, for your opinion, is it moving forward or it's stagnating, or what problems can you see right now in the ecosystem, in the community? What can you change, or what would you change if you can? And such kind of questions, more about the overall scope of a Clojure, not about the project itself, but
I
everything.
see. I like in the landscape of things. I'm not sure we're doing anything wrong. Like, it's just the in a way, it feels too foreign for a lot of people. So the adoption question is like always the question. We don't necessarily need to strive that we are the biggest language in the world because you lose your filter.
Yeah.
But and I think that everything that we're doing, like people who don't get it, it's not that they tried and don't get it; they just haven't tried. So there is the key to growing is that more people get to really try it, and if we can somehow make that appealing or normal, exotic, it feels Haskell-y, like, oh, it's only for, I don't know, academics, whatever, but it isn't. I mean, but that's maybe how it's viewed because of simply it's like the number of users, it's like below a certain level, so it must be niche and Haskell-y or exotic or esoteric or whatever. Sort of solve that, then we can get the adoption up. But within the community, I think it's really nice. Also, like old code still works if you can still compile it and all that. That's a quality. That's not like stagnation. That's the opposite of stagnation. A lot of stagnation is by the fact that stuff gets changed all the time, and then old stuff doesn't work anymore. That's stagnation. And but it feels like, oh, you're getting to use new tools. Yeah, but why? Okay, I can rant about this forever, but
That's interesting. But how we can explain this to other people in the industry that a library that doesn't have commits for 3 years, it's not dead.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. And it's really kind of unusual phenomena for industry.
Yeah, it is kind of hard to in bigger companies to make Clojure happen just because it's not on way to not enough people's radar. It's not really a problem like the language is bad. It's just you need some sort of tipping point or numbers if you really want to get to Python levels or whatever. But I mean, it's kind of sad. I mean, still like on my university, the girl next door is going to the university now where I went to, like, and she asked me, can you help me with my programming exercise? I'm stuck and I know you're programmer. And it was still like Java, that's what it was. Of course, yeah. And then she said, no, next year the university quits Java and we go to Python. It's not that like they considered Clojure as well, It's not, they didn't. That's sad a little bit. So the good thing is that everyone who works with Clojure is like intrinsically enthusiastic about it from the first principles, because of the first principle of the language.
And, comparing the time when you started the product, it was 6 years ago, And right now, how do you evaluate the state of ecosystem? Is it getting better from year to year or anything else?
Nice tools come up now and then. I mean, I'm always amazed with, amongst a lot of others, but like what Borg dude, my fellow countryman Michiel Borkent, always comes up with. It's always interesting to kind of follow that. But also, I love like someone at some point a few years ago told me about scope capture. Like I was like, this is like magic, So it's like the tool like that I use now so often to fix issues, It's so that is innovation, I think. Even though I'm not even sure how old it is, but maybe it's around for a bit. But to be honest, I don't really follow the cutting edge of the ecosystem that much. I am way too preoccupied by just developing every day. So I'm using Clojure like a gazillion times a week, hours a week, and my team does as well. But I'm not really like on the forums a lot. But that's me. Just basically, I'm basically don't want to sound arrogant, but I'm too busy like writing Clojure.
And the last question on this blog from me: would you take the Clojure as a main technical stack for your product right now if you would start today?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Like really, like no doubt at all.
Okay, I think everything else is covered before.
Yeah.
And the reasons. Okay.
Yeah.
One last, I guess, question is rather a question for advice. So as a person who wants like choosing Clojure for his own product, what would you say to others about the advantages of Clojure, or maybe drawbacks that it brings to the business, actual business today, that makes it a compelling choice for a new product?
The quickest way to develop and it's like prototyping. You can do very rapid prototyping, but it is seamless into product developing as a whole. It's like, it's so to the point, pragmatic, ergonomic. It's like short feedback loops. That's the best. If you have think about a slow feedback loop somewhere in your life, maybe I don't know, your Windows laptop updating, you know, like whenever you I mean, you don't have time for that anymore. I mean, your brain is disconnected. You're thinking about other things. People shouldn't underestimate, like, if a feedback loop is slow, or if you don't feel like you're making progress, how demoralizing that can be in productiveness. You know, your productiveness can drop. And with Clojure, that's one of the main things, that it is really quick. Yeah, but of course you need to have a little bit of a basic. So yeah, you need to try it out for a little bit, maybe, but then yeah, it's. I think it's a fast way of developing, yeah.
So REPL-based development, fast feedback loop,
and a lot of other things as well. So I don't want to sound like, just saying that, I don't want to sound like this is the one thing and the other things are, there's like, I think there's like 10 things, I'm not naming the other, that we all know that are very important and are lacking in a lot of other tools. People don't even realize that that's what they actually want, like the non-Clojure people. That's why the people like us are like, so, I don't like the word, but like, so are always like fanatic or religious about it, outspoken about it. That's one of the reasons, because it's just so good. So yeah.
Yeah, interesting point of view. And we've been talking for almost an hour now. We've discussed great number of different topics, I believe. But when you were invited to this podcast, I'm sure you had some. You've been imagining what topics you will be discussing, and perhaps there is a topic or maybe topics that we haven't covered yet, but you really, really wanted to talk about it.
You did all right, actually, because I kind of like the premise of it being in the context of a business sense. It's worth it and all that stuff. So that was what I was anticipating, and that was I liked as well. A lot of stuff in conferences and all that is sometimes it's a lot about libraries and it's about open source, and which is all great. I mean, but it's kind of nice to also have like more of the commercial side of things, like the business side of things, the startup side of things, to put Clojure in that light as well. Which, by the way, I also think could help adoption, depending on. These kind of stories, what I was expecting, and that's what you asked. So,
okay. We're asking this because it's interesting to gather questions from the guests also for our podcast. Because sometimes we can have blind spots, we cannot notice something, and it's really interesting to hear. And we have this chain of questions from guest to guest, and we have question for you from our previous guest, and I will read it. If you could fly back in time 15 years and have a conversation with Rich Hickey, what would you convince him to change in Clojure?
I could convince him. I would probably be inside, like in awe, probably. Then I would have started Clojure earlier, I think. I don't know, actually. I'm not really sure. We're missing a lot of stuff or anything, actually. It kind of ticks all my boxes all the time. It's the most boring answer, but everything he writes about it and talks about it and all that stuff, in general, he shows the world like how things can be like. And he has given an awful lot of thought about all this stuff. Also from his experience, like, from C++ in the. That's why I don't really have anything or a lot to argue with him, actually. No.
Okay, that's
the honest answer. I'm not going to make something up just because. I mean, it's really how I think about it, actually.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Adam Thornhill, who initially asked us this question, we were curious because we never thought about this question in general.
No.
And we asked him as well, what would you change actually? And he said, I'm actually not sure, but it's really interesting to hear what others will say.
Yeah.
So your answer is practically like nothing.
No.
That you would change nothing.
No.
It's also a great response, in my opinion.
Yeah, but it is true. I don't really.
Actually, I had an answer, and you can check it when the episode will out.
Cool.
If we will keep it, I don't know.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, so this is a part where we also would like to ask you to leave the question to another guest who will be after you.
So I thought about this, and it's the topic of adoption again. As I said, like before the podcast, I've kind of like happy now in a place that I've created a few Clojure jobs now, both in CaterMonkey and in the previous project I worked on. There's now other developers working on that. So I kind of passed the baton, is that the word? And my question would be like, what would be a good way to create Clojure jobs, like real money paying Clojure jobs? How would you go about like doing this?
Interesting.
Nice question.
It's interesting for me because, one of the main goal of Freshcode is creating Clojure jobs.
Yeah.
Actually. And we have a team of 30 people doing Clojure full time.
Awesome.
And I would answer if you're interested. We should focus on making Clojure popular and more widespread among the industry. And in this way, we will encourage other CTOs, technical leaders, or technical founders that will leave their company to start businesses in Clojure.
Yeah.
So the main and easiest, I think, way is to spread the word about the Clojure on other conferences, not only inside community, but in other contexts.
Yeah, I think the best way that Clojure is that projects in companies are started with it. And I heard Rich Hickey say, some people said they snuck Clojure into our company, that kind of thing. And I think planting seeds like that. So if you're like so for your, like what Freshcode is probably doing, there now and again there's greenfield project. I mean, I did like 6 or so in like CaterMonkey, this recruitment app, and then 4 others, like some like internal tools. Most of some like a little portal for something, or for some educational institute, kind of those things. But these are now projects that run and need maintenance, or they're growing, or that is creating jobs now. If there's a code base going on and the code base provides value, then there's not much choice than to either rewrite it in something else or continue doing so. And often that is the last part is the easiest, because it's kind of funny actually. Like I had these projects and I was kind of willing to pass the baton because CaterMonkey is consuming all my time. And on the Clojure Slack and all that, I was pretty quickly in finding other people, either a freelancer or who could take over the project, or so that's pretty interesting as well. It was with not much effort, so that was cool. Yeah. So now they are getting paid for doing that work. So
guerrilla tactics, yeah.
Yeah, guerrilla.
I made this on my previous job 12 years ago when I brought Clojure into QA department. I created DSL for them to write automation tests, and it's still in process actually.
That's great. Yeah.
I don't know how they support it, but they're still using this.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It does work. Yeah. There's some factory in the Netherlands that uses an internal monitoring tool for the production. They're depending more and more on it. And never was it like, did you write it in Clojure? Now you're saying to us you want to pass the baton. No, I kind of found someone who takes the baton and pretty easily, and he was pretty quickly up to speed and is improving it like as we speak. That's the thing as well. A lot of projects that I started as a greenfield project wasn't in a software company where the software company was an end user. It was like in an educational institute, in a recruitment agency, in a factory. So they have very different core businesses, and we are supporting them with IT tools, software tools. So they're not really interested in it. Should it be written in Python or whatever? They just want a problem solved. Realize that. I mean, if you're a freelance consultant or something, and someone asks, can you automate something for it? And you build it in Clojure. That company isn't like a software company with some sort of policy around it. You can just do it. And it's not even unfair or something. You just deliver value and you make it works, and no one will bat an eyelid. And it's not even, that sounds like it's like you committed a crime. You didn't. And in a way, it's better because Clojure codes kind of stay stable. If you used one of the JavaScript projects or Node projects for it, and then 5 years later, it's not the Node framework anymore, and no one wants to touch it, that happens. That is more criminal.
Yeah. Thank you for very pleasant and insightful conversation. Today,
you too.
Clojure, about its future and about your perspective of how it's actually been doing business in Clojure, because it's not a very common thing in our world.
It would be cool if that would be more promoted, but it's hard. I mean, I get it why it's not, but that would be a cool topic to more, for me at least, and I think for you guys as well. Like,
definitely.
Yeah, in addition, I'd like to say also thank you, Martin, and to our audience. If you'd like to learn more about CaterMonkey or connect with Martin, we will be sharing the links below this video to access the website and social profile. So right below this episode, please check out the links. And learn more about CaterMonkey.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Very much fun.
Very much fun. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. See you soon.